Hello, everybody. Welcome to the InduSoft webinar today covering water and wastewater with our very special guest, Mr. Nick Hitchcock from Patti Engineering. And today we're going to be covering a host of things related to water and wastewater. I'm going to cover, first of all, my name is Scott Courtier. I'm Senior Technical Sales with InduSoft. And we're going to cover a number of things. I'm going to talk a little bit about the markets that InduSoft is in, some of our case studies, our certified integrator program, system integrator program, and talk about and demonstrate some features related to water and wastewater. And then I'm going to hand it over to Nick from Patti Engineering, and he's going to cover a project that he did and talk about some of the issues with the previous system and why InduSoft was chosen and what features were used in that project. So, again, thank you for joining us today. Some quick logistics. We can't hear you in this type of webinar, and if you have any questions or comments, please put those into the chat panel or the Q&A panel on the WebEx interface. We'll try to get to those during the presentation. If not, there's a question and answer section at the end. So we welcome questions. Please let us know your thoughts or comments. Also, we'll be sending out, we're going to record the webinar, and we'll be sending out a follow-up email and survey. Let us know how we did today, and let us know what you'd like to see in the future. And also, if you give us your name and shirt size and address, we'll send you a free T-shirt just for joining us. So we really appreciate everybody joining us today. Good turnout. Love to see that. Thank you. Okay, so. If you didn't know this, I see many new people on the login list here. InduSoft is really in just about every market that you can think of. And if you've ever seen us present this slide in one of our presentations, I always like to point out the and others section here over on the right, because we're really in every industry that you can imagine. Not only water and waste, warehousing, automotive, machinery, things of that nature, but many different industries. And why would you care if you're in a particular industry about other industries? Well, sometimes those other industries have features or concepts within their industry that they like to have when it comes to an HMI and SCADA software. To give you an example, the pharmaceutical industry, they do a lot of projects that have built into it traceability and security. Well, some of those customers have asked us to add those traceability and security features built into our product, and we just added them for everybody. So the really neat thing is when one industry asks us to add a feature, it very often goes into the product as a standard feature, such as this security and traceability, this 21 CFR Part 11, which is a U.S. federal government standard for this traceability. And what's really neat, and you'll see here today, we'll talk a little bit about the security features and the traceability, and that's been taken advantage in the water and wastewater industry and the food and beverage industry. So, again, some of those features that get talked about in different markets get added into the product and are just standard. If you didn't know this, we have a lot of different case studies on the website. By the way, we have over 270,000 licenses installed worldwide. Actually, I think we're approaching 300,000 now. And these different case studies, you can find these on our website, and of all kinds of different industries. Let me show you where you can find those on the website. These are real customer solved reports, if you will. So right here under the main navigation, marketing, under case studies. And we put quite a few of these up here. They're also broken down into different categories here, nice quick links. And what I wanted to highlight when you move the website out of the way here is these are just a handful of the ones on water and wastewater that we've done. So if you have some questions, some ideas, something you want to look at, maybe say, how did somebody else do this? Or what do their screens look like? Or what are they trying to do with it? Get some good ideas. And you don't have to necessarily look at only the case studies that are in your industry or your market segments. Take a look at other industries, because sometimes those other industries have some really good ideas. And again, these can all be downloaded off the InduSoft website, or when you get the install media, if you get install media from InduSoft, they're on there as well. Let's talk a bit about our certified system integrator program that we have that Patti Engineering is actually a part of. What do you get for this? What are the benefits? Well, you get up to 5 free development licenses if you join and pass our test. We've switched fairly recently, gosh, I don't even know how long ago, maybe mid this year, to an online test. It used to be that you used to have to take a test, fill out a document, send that in. Somebody would have to grade it, and it took a long time to do. Well, now we've streamlined this and set this up on an online exam. That's I won't say the test is easy. It's fair, but it proves your competency. It proves system integrator competency with InduSoft Web Studio. So when customers get a chance to hire one of our certified integrators, they know they're proficient in the product. If you're a system integrator, what do you get? Well, in addition to the 5 free development licenses, you get special pricing on toolkits and import wizards. By the way, we just came out with Service Pack 1 for version 8, and along with that comes a new Factory Talk View import tool. So this is going to be really neat experience to be able to bring in from Rockwell's Factory Talk into InduSoft Web Studio, and from what I've seen so far, it works pretty well. Also, you'll receive free technical training, either in our Austin, Texas facility here in the U.S., or you can take a look at our online training videos as well. There's no annual support fees, so you can get support with this program and marketing support for your company. Get leads when we get requests for system integrators, things of that nature, and you can have this nice, awesome logo specifically for your company websites. Question that came up while I was on a case study: do we have any case studies for corrections? I'm assuming that means detention and prisons. Yes, we do. There are a handful of those up on the website. Thank you for asking. So I want to cover some features that are related to water and wastewater within InduSoft Web Studio. Personally, I have not been involved with many water and wastewater projects. I'm based in the Detroit, Michigan area, and I get involved with a lot of metal cutting and a lot of automotive applications, plastics, typically things of that nature, but not a lot of water and wastewater, at least me personally, but InduSoft has got a lot of experience in that. So I'd like to talk about a handful of these features, some of which I'll actually show. Thin clients, how you can view and remotely interact with applications. Our symbols, I'll talk briefly about those. In fact, Nick has some of symbols in his part of his presentation. We'll talk about redundancy, security, different communications. When it comes to communications, if you didn't know this, InduSoft has over 250 drivers built in to talk to really every brand of PLC and controller that you can imagine. But not only that, but things like flow meters and motion and things of that nature. But not only communicating through typical serial or Ethernet connection, but we can communicate via radios, cell connections, satellite connections, even dial-up if you have to. So there's a lot of different ways to communicate with InduSoft Web Studio. Also, I'll do a brief little thing on email and sending text messages, and talk about alarms, trends, events, and reports. And hopefully I get my section done with giving Nick enough time to get his presentation done. I've only got a couple of slides that I want to show, and then I'm going to go into a demo about reporting. So if you're not familiar, InduSoft has 3 different types of thin clients. We've got Web Thin Client, which is typically used in an office environment where you might open up Internet Explorer on a desktop or a laptop computer and point it to a remote runtime. Now, this allows you to view and interact with the real screens, but you have that Internet Explorer browser window open. And again, this is used more in an office environment, but Secure Viewer client, thin clients, you don't have that browser window. It's a full screen, edge to edge, and in fact, you really can't tell that it's not the real runtime. And when I teach training classes, I teach students how to programmatically determine if they're a thin client or they're the server, so that lets you know that it looks just like the real runtime. And these can be used in a number of different ways. You can use these as kind of a duplicate HMI on the other side of your facility in a different place in a control room, or remotely, and think of this maybe on a big screen TV showing current status, current levels, current flow rates, things of that nature, in a big screen, maybe in your control room or an office environment. And then the third one, Studio Mobile Access, which is what we call it when we're viewing on an HTML5 browser. And it could be, this is really neat, could be on an iPad, could be on a Mac, could be on an Android smartphone or tablet, or even a Windows desktop or laptop or tablet remotely. This helps, especially in water and wastewater where a lot of these facilities are remote. It helps you stay really, really efficient. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was the symbols built into the product, and not only built into the product, but the fact that we have this Symbol of the Week program, which I'll show you here in a second. But why would you use symbols? I like to talk about three different ideas using symbols. Number one, they keep graphical consistency. You don't have to make functionality. You can make just graphical shapes and pictures and things of that nature, but it really helps keep a very consistent look and feel across your application. The second concept, which I think Nick will talk about quite a bit in his presentation, is this idea of linked symbols. Now, the linked symbols, the idea is no matter how many of the same symbol you put on in your project, they all go back to a single linked design. Now, what I mean by that is if you put a pump on the screen and it's pump 1 symbol, that'll go back to pump 1 symbol. And if you put pump 2 symbol on the screen, that'll go back to a second symbol. And if you wanted to change, let's say, pump 2 symbol in all the different places you used in your project, you can go back to that one linked design, that pump 2 symbol, change it, and it will change all the instances of pump 2 throughout your entire project. That's really handy, really nice. So there's that linked concept, linked symbol concept. The third thing is custom properties, where you get to define your own custom properties. And we have several webinars that we've done and training videos online. I'd like to encourage you to take a look at those symbols and get the understanding of these three different concepts. But when you're configuring custom properties, what you're really doing is kind of defining your own custom object. If there's something that you need that InduSoft doesn't have built in, you can put something together once, define it with your own custom properties, and really it's your own custom object at that point. So in addition to the more than 1,000 symbols that are included in InduSoft Web Studio, if you go on our website and go to here under Store Free Add-ons, you can see a list of all the different symbols that we've added in this Symbol of the Week program. So check back often, and I'm going to scroll down here really quick and show you a couple of the more recent symbols, things like a gauge with a set point indicator, these minimalistic symbols. We've kind of been doing a series of those. Really nice looking buttons, slide out menus, things of that nature. Here's one that we did just a couple of weeks ago that is an analog indicator that has a high and a low set point, and if the actual value exceeds that, then the set point actually blinks and notifies you that you're over that set point. And again, these are on the website. They're free of charge, download for free. And the big idea really is just to reduce the development time of your project. I think Nick will probably point that out. Oh, here's some other ones that we did. Not only pump control faceplates, kind of dashboard, kind of build your own dashboard. This was designed for smartphones, and then these flow meters faceplates. And I'd also like to let you know that if you have a need for a symbol and maybe don't have enough understanding of how symbols work, either check out our training videos, webinars, or send us a request to build a symbol for you. Always looking for ideas for that. All right, so also in the product is redundancy. There's three different types of redundancies in InduSoft Web Studio. There's database redundancy. So if you're going to a SQL database, you can have redundant systems where it'll have a failover to kind of a hot swap of a primary and secondary database, and you get to choose whether or not you want that to be redundant, where there's two separate copies of the same data stored on two separate databases, or this idea of store and forward. Now, store and forward, if the primary goes offline, say that's your network server, and you keep a copy of it local on your secondary or your backup server when that primary is offline. When the primary comes back up online, it will actually move that to the primary, sort of a copy and move, or move as opposed to keeping a redundant copy of it. So those are two separate ways that we handle database redundancy. Thin client redundancy, hosting, where is the server coming from for your data? That can be set up in a client, in a redundant system for thin clients, and total system redundancy. And we've got some neat articles on our blog, as well as this link here will point you to a sample application, which I've got a screenshot here of, that shows you how to do system redundancy, where you have a primary and a secondary runtime server sharing tags, communicating in a redundant situation to two different PLCs. So really good example application on how to do that up on the website. So take a look at that. I'd also like to bring up two different types of security systems. We have a built-in security system, which really breaks down into two different, there's a local only and then a distributed security, which is a server and a client situation, where one can be the server that the clients authenticate against, and then go back. So the server, the clients authenticate against that, and then if you need to make one change, then the changes get rolled out to all the different clients. Also, there's LDAP, which stands for Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, and most of you will know this is being able to connect using Microsoft Active Directory. So if you've got for example, like a Windows-based PC, and you log in, to your domain, well, that's using Microsoft Active Directory. So if you need to use Microsoft Active Directory in a water type application, you don't have to recreate your security system, authenticate against that Microsoft Active Directory, and you don't have to create new users and new groups. So it's another way to do that. Let's see. There was a question that came in about PLCs. I'm going to postpone that one, and we'll answer that during the question and answer section. I wanted to also point out about email and text messages. For those of you who don't use email in an InduSoft application, first you have to configure the email client and set that up to go to your server. And you can do that in two different ways. You can do that with a scripting command, or if I bring in InduSoft Web Studio here, you can go to the project tab, and then here in the email section, you can actually set this up in this nice little form that we have, and it'll do that with this checkbox. It'll run that configuration when you start your runtime. So alternatively, you can do this in a script and do this programmatically, or do this just to kind of fill this out. I also recommend every time I've done this mail program or this emailing, I never quite know, is my username my full name, or just first initial, last name, or how does that work? So I will often, there's a sample application up on our website called Dial-Up, and it's basically sending email, but it doesn't have to be dial-up. And I'll often use that, kind of fill in the blank, and allows me to do some nice testing to be able to set that up. To my, and I think we just added this test button here, so that might even help you even more. But take a look at that sample application. That often will help related to that. And then you have the ability to use built into the alarms to send emails, or the flexibility to really use it anywhere in scripting. And there's one of the script commands is not only sending email, but with attachments, which you could include PDFs, reports, which I'll touch on here in a minute. So a lot of different things to do, text files, any file really. And then to send SMS text messages, we've got a really good blog article talking about how to send text messages to cell phones. So take a look at that article, really good article written there. It's It's been out for a long time, but I think it's still relevant as well. I want to talk a bit about reports. I'll do a quick demonstration, and I'll hand it over to Nick. We have reports can be in many different formats. We can do text, rich text, CSV files, XML files, HTML files, which I'm going to demonstrate here in a second, and then turn any of those into PDFs. And you also have the option to use third-party reporting tools. For example, on our website, you can find a link to Dream Report to be able to purchase that separately if you need those tools. But I find that when a lot of customers look to see what we can really do with reports above and beyond just text, they go, I think I can do everything in InduSoft Web Studio. So what I wanted to touch on is a concept of doing HTML reporting with a trend snapshot built in. So if I bring in InduSoft Web Studio here, and I'm going to actually just run this project and show you what it does, and then I'll show you my configuration. And so here what I have is I have a screen where I'm doing some trending down here at the bottom, where I have a little slider that I can move up and down, and then the other pen is actually the seconds clock, so you can see that thing ramping up. And I just want to get some data in here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a customer. So let's select Greenacre Farms. Now, I recognize that this isn't really a water and wastewater type application, but you'll get the concept of being able to embed trend into a report. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a button to export this trend to a JPEG. So it just exported that snapshot, and then I'm going to use this print report. Now this will cause the HTML report to be printed to a file on my hard drive. Then I'm going to change pages here, and this will open up whatever file I want it to. In this case, I'm going to do the one that is today at 9:23 a.m. I'm in the Eastern Time Zone in the U.S., and I'm going to say OK. And what this has done is printed an HTML report, which is kind of an invoice or a bill of lading here with that trend snapshot embedded in it. And this is actually an HTML report. I can turn this into a PDF. So let me real quick show you how this was done. Let me go back to the development environment. And in our reports are normally text. But what I've done here is I've actually put in the report format, I just put HTML. And when I save this, I save it with the time and date stamp and then the extension of HTML. And then I just put HTML into the report format. And anywhere I need a tag, I put the tag inside of curly brackets, which shows that value. And then here's what I've done is I've embedded that trend output image.jpg here, or trend output.jpg. And let me show you how I actually get that. When I'm on the main screen and I click on this trend report, what it's doing is it's toggling a tag called trend export. And then over here in the trend, under the advanced tools, what I'm doing is whenever that trend export changes, it outputs that trend JPEG. It takes a snapshot of that trend, and then I use that in my report. So you can see how easy it is to get those types of images, whether it's a trend or whether it's another, maybe a screenshot embedded into your report, and get that to show up on the screen. So hopefully some good examples there. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Nick.
All right, Scott, well, thanks for the introduction and thanks for the opportunity to present. My name is Nick Hitchcock, and we're going to talk about a wastewater project that we executed recently. Let me click over there. So I'm with Patti Engineering. We're a control systems integrator out of Auburn Hills, Michigan. We also have offices in Austin, Chattanooga, Kokomo, Indiana, and Boston. I'm actually speaking to you all out of Austin, Texas right now. We're about 40 employees and 30 engineers. We are CSA certified. We won the Controls Engineering Integrator of the Year back in 2013. As Scott said, we are a member of the InduSoft Certified Integrator Program. We've had that since 2010. I think it's a great program. You get a lot of support from the staff, and the development licenses help as well. Along with that, we're also certified partners with Siemens, Mitsubishi, Phoenix, Contact, and Fanuc Robotics. As I said, my name is Nicola Hitchcock. I've been with Patti for about 8 years now, 6 of them being in Texas. I'm a lead engineer and do project management for the company. I've got experience with PLCs, HMIs, SCADA systems, various networks, drives, servos, fun stuff like that. And have personal experience in the automotive, coming out of Detroit, water, wastewater, food and bev, among others. So the project we're going to be speaking about today was a retrofit of a control systems for a municipal water wastewater system. We were asked to come in and replace the control panels in several water plants and add functionality to it. Each of the plants were just individual islands. They had no network between themselves or back to City Hall. We actually implemented a network with cellular routers and industrial routers, setting up VPNs between each location. So we actually set up a Ethernet network amongst the locations. And we also utilize radios for remote monitoring and control of wells and lift stations. Specifically, what I'll be talking to you today about is the design and implementation of 5 different SCADA servers that had both local and remote control and monitoring of the control systems for the plants. The previous system, it was really more HMI than SCADA. It was really just a local HMI at each plant. And they did have back at City Hall, back in the maintenance shop, a single HMI that was connected over radio to each of the plants. But it wasn't a full control remote access. It was really just for monitoring, seeing a couple alarms, and a lot of the stuff that they wanted to do, they'd still have to go out to the plant and make those changes. So a lot of extra work for the employees there. A lot of the set points and pump rolls and other functionality of the system were just hard-coded, and there was no real logging of data or alarms or any way to get that data out. So all of their reporting and diagnostics and long-term maintenance of the system was just all done manually with sneakerware and paper and pen. Our goal of replacing the SCADA system was to get some automated logging of both process values along with alarms and warnings. We wanted to generate automated reports that their people could use and import into their wider reporting system to keep a good eye on their entire system. We wanted to expand that remote monitoring and control of the system so that they could respond quicker to issues, and we wanted to improve usability and flexibility of the interface. So why InduSoft? We've always found that it's pretty quick to develop anything in there. Once you get going with it, it's not too steep of a learning curve compared to some other products, and once you got it, you can do quite a bit of stuff. It's got a pretty good connectivity with various databases besides its internal database. There's remote access via web, thin clients, which is how we did it with this project. But as Scott said, there's both mobile versions and the secure client as well. We also take advantage of the reporting systems, their alarming tools, specifically the emails out, so that operators that aren't necessarily at the plant can still be notified when something happens. It's also got a pretty good price point. So these, for the entire system, we actually had 5 different installations of InduSoft, and that was for independent local control at each plant. We didn't want a loss of network connectivity to remove their ability to control locally. So we set up an instance in InduSoft on each location, and with the price point that they offer, wasn't that much of a hurdle on that point. And then expandability, you can always buy what you think you need as far as licenses, and if you need to step up, you just pay the difference to that next cost, that next level. So I touched on the network topology that we set up, but this is what enabled us to get that remote access, both at City Hall, and then some of the operators have tablets that they can get on the internet and hit these sites by VPNing in. So each plant had a cellular router and an industrial firewall installed on top of their local control system. And back in City Hall, on their network, we put another firewall VPN appliance with our web server sitting behind it. Then we set up VPN tunnels from each plant back through City Hall's main firewall down to our firewall appliance. Essentially, we had our own network that was walled off from the rest of the world. It was each plant could talk to each other if they needed to, and they could get data to the web server as well. The city devices on the City Hall network were able to go through the firewall, but just to hit that web server and just to hit web pages. So we actually hosted up all of the web pages that we developed off of that web server box sitting at City Hall, and routed all the traffic through there. To make this work, we actually had to utilize a tool within InduSoft called Web Tunnel Gateway. The picture on the right is just a snapshot from the help document. I didn't really have to talk to anyone as far as how to get this up. Didn't really need any support. The help document was pretty good. So I just go into the index, type in Web Tunneling Gateway, and it'll take you right through a pretty good how-to. Pretty sure they have a webinar about this as well. But the reason we needed this, in order for thin clients to display a project fully, that device needs to be able to talk to both the web server, which is serving up the web pages, as well as the data server, which is where InduSoft is running. Many times, these are the same box, and so this isn't that big of a deal. But other times they are separate boxes, as in our situation. And even if they're different boxes, you don't necessarily need to use Web Tunnel Gateway, but it's because we blocked access from the PCs on the wider City Hall network from getting out to the plant network. So they had no direct route to go to get that data. You could go to the web pages, you could see all the visualizations, but you wouldn't have any live data. So this Web Tunnel Gateway is an application you install typically on your web server, and it encapsulates and reroutes data out to the data servers and back. So the thin clients are told to go look at the web page, the web server, and the packets requesting the data actually get bounced over to the other location. So once you get it installed, once you get the application installed based off of the help document, there's still some configuration within InduSoft that you need to do. When you come to the ribbon, go to the project tab, select web, and that brings up the project settings. So this data server IP address is the IP address that gets embedded into your project, that when clients go out to the web pages, they say, okay, this is the data server that I need to hit. But to actually get the Web Tunnel client, Web Tunnel Gateway working and talking right, you need to click on the Advanced button, and configure these settings. So you can have both a primary and secondary IP address. In my project, I actually did utilize this. So PCs on the outside of our firewall at City Hall would actually be pointed at the firewall IP address and then routed to our web server. But then any devices that were behind that firewall couldn't get that external IP address, so they'd have to hit the secondary IP address. Not too difficult to set up, but adds a layer of security and separation in your system. So digging into the application itself, this is a screenshot of our main page. We had a system overview. Across the top, we have navigation buttons, set points, alarms, totals, and reports, as well as a logon. So all of the viewing of the system could be done without logging on. But if you needed to modify anything, acknowledge a fault, change a set point, switch from auto to hand, you'd have to log on. And we did utilize the LDAP security analyst. So the city employees are just using their same domain logins that they use on their own computers. Getting a little bit deeper, I'll kind of breeze through all the screens and then flip over to the application. But since I'm not connected with the system, the actual system, I wasn't able to show the actual visualization. So this kind of shows the animations. So the main screens are used to control all the devices. We've got wells that are controlled as groups, chlorine valves for chlorinating the water. We have local storage tanks and then pumps that pressurize the distribution. Like I said before, if the user is logged in, they can control the devices, flip between handoff and auto, and able to configure well groups, individually control each well, and change the roles of those wells. The set points, like I said before, a lot of their previous set points were hard-coded and they were stuck with the roles that the pumps were defined as originally. So they actually set up 3 different recipes based off of demand of water. So they can change the mode across the top as well as select each recipe and change the set points for each of those values. I didn't actually utilize the recipe functionality within InduSoft. I just stored all that data on the database on the PLC itself. But in other applications, I have used the recipes. But this setup is just all pointed at the PLC. Alarms. So each set point would have an alarm value. Would post up alarms. It shows when they come in, when they've been acknowledged, and when they've cleared out. We also show historical alarms as well as set up emails, as Scott mentioned. So anytime an alarm happens at the plant, even though operator isn't there, they'll get an email to their smartphone, know to log into the system. Have an indication of totalization of both pump run times and flows. And this is logged into a SQL database that we query for our reports later on. So our reports, we set up both a screen so that they can just query the stuff locally, select a start date, end date, time, range, press to refresh data, and this will go out and query the database, pull values out of the database and present them for that time range. The generate report button then runs a script that writes all these values formatted into a CSV file. Again, I didn't use the actual report functionality, but I did use their scripting to stuff the tags into essentially a text file that formatted as a CSV. And then we also, this was a pop-up from locally on the servers. They didn't have Office installed. So when you press that generate report, it'll actually go and open that file that's stored locally, and then you can save it off. If you're in the web pages and you had Outlook or Office installed, this would open up in Excel. And they're able to look at all this data, either here, copy and paste over into their other reporting systems. And then we also embedded in the alarm history as well into the report. That way they could track which alarms happen more often, Pareto those, and kind of focus on the bigger offenses. We also utilized the trend screens and allowed a lot of optimization and modification in the runtime. So they can turn on and off different pens, different process values, as well as zoom in, zoom out, change the set point, change the windows that you're looking at. So I also wanted to touch on some shortcuts that you can increase your efficiency. Two of the things I really like to take advantage of is both class tags and link symbols. Class tags are basically structures of tags. So if you're reusing the same set of tags for multiple pumps or conveyors or what have you, you just set up that structure once and either array that out or do multiple instances of it. And then as Scott mentioned, link symbols. And I'll dive into both of those. And then also touch on screen groups and template screens, or not really like built-in, well, screen groups are, but template screens aren't really a built-in function, but it's just a practice that I do just to make it easy on myself. So class tags, in the Project Explorer and the global area where your tags are defined, there's also a folder called classes. And you create a new one, and it looks very much like your tag table, but you just define your individual tags. So in the case of this class, it's your handoff and auto push button bools, and then a mode indicator and a status. And each one of those handoff, auto, control symbols had the same tags used for them, so I created a symbol. If I needed to add an additional tag to this, I just edit this here, and all of my class tag instances elsewhere would be populated and modified. But so reusability, being able to array stuff and change stuff in one place and have it populated everywhere else is really convenient. So I want to jump over to show you that a little bit more in detail. So you got your project tags, and looking at the data sheet view, I've got, these are all class tags here. Here you're just your standard tag types, your string, your integer, et cetera, but all our class tags are of type that class. And just by convention, I put a C before that, just so I know that tag is the class tag. I could have done like a single well tag and then arrayed it here, but there weren't that many, and they weren't in sequential order, just the way the city was laid out. So I really just had multiple instances just to make it more clear to the user. Also, I guess I could have still done an array from 1 to 32 and just created extra tags, but just trying to be a little bit more efficient here. But so throughout the system where I'm using well 2, I have a well 2 tag, but then I also have a well 2 dot hand button and well 2 dot off button. If I needed to then add another indicator of like a fault indicator, I could come over here to the definition of that device control status and on the data sheet view and just say fault reset PV. And now I have a well 2 dot fault reset PB, well 4 dot fault reset PB throughout the system. So that's class tags. Link symbols, they're similar and almost identical in many ways to faceplates in other packages. Similar to class tags, they're a thing that lives in one place that you can use and reuse in multiple instances, and edit in one place and apply that throughout your system. The properties that Scott was mentioning is what I'm referring to here as passing in tags. So you can have just a single symbol that's really just a graphic that you want to repeat all over the place, or if you want interaction, display of animation, or inputs like push buttons, for example, you can pass stuff in and out of the tag, the link symbol via properties. So if you check out both the system overview screen and the well control screen, I've got the same symbol, taking its time, used many times. So rather than just setting up a unique set of drawings and copying and pasting and editing all the things, I set up this project symbol. So you both have libraries of symbols that come with the system, where you can create your own symbols on the fly. Once you have a symbol created, that's put it in. Let me edit it. Sorry. It looks just like another screen. You can draw and add to it. But to actually get the functionality of this device that I was looking for, I was taking advantage of the properties. And let me switch over here. So this, unlike that other screen, is one single device, one single object. And it's got custom properties that I created. I pass in a status control, a device name, status 1 and status 2, which are just strings. And so this device name is just what gets displayed up top here, and then status, because I wanted different verbs for different statuses for different devices. I'm allowed that to be modifiable from here. And then this status control, you can do just integer properties or string properties, what have you, but I actually did a property that was a class tag. So I was taking advantage of class tags just to create and keep that structure, but then I'm also passing that whole structure in. So this chlorine valve 1 is a class tag. And then to actually get those individual tags, statuses, I guess I have to move this stuff around, but here's the device name. Any tag or expression that you want to pass in as a property, you use this pound indication, and then this device name is what gets displayed over here. Then you have the colon and then a default value. So I just put in a string in there to begin with. So that's how you can just pass in a simple object, so a simple tag type. To get a class tag, if you just pass in the whole class tag, the value of the class tag itself is really a string of its name. But to get its individual components, it's a little bit unintuitive, but once you know the trick, it's not too difficult to use. So the status control is the class tag, and then you have to put in a default value as well. But the default value is not just the class tag, but the subset of the class tag itself. So I actually had to create in the tag table, I guess I could have just reused another one, but just so it wouldn't get confused, I had to create a temp device status control that isn't used anywhere else in the system, but it just gets you that structure. And then a subset, a subtag, a child of that class tag is this mode indicator integer. And so your initial value is the class tag dot mode indicator. And that way you can pass in the, so this is the indication for red and green for whether it being an auto or not. And then you can also, I guess it's over here. The button itself is setting and resetting those Boolean values that are subsets of that device tag. So, so I was able to get all of those individual tags passed into the symbol by just typing in a single tag here. So it allows you to copy and paste and change less stuff. It removes chances of mistakes and just speeds up development time. So anytime I can do that, I try to take advantage of it to a fault sometimes. There we go. So that's link symbols. So template screen, like I said, this isn't necessarily a feature, but just a best practice I use. Once I have my layout set up, I'll create a screen with all of the generic reusable stuff set up there, my background, any navigation, anything else like that. And then I just save that off as, in this case, I call it base. And when I want to create a new screen, I'll just copy and paste that screen, do a save as, get it as a new screen, and then put the content in the body of it. So it's that reusability that I was just going for there. It doesn't necessarily change in one place and affect everywhere, but once you got it set, you can just copy and paste and not have to do it multiple times. So that's the end of my presentation. Here's my contact info if you have any follow-up questions that we don't get to in the question and answer session. But with that, I'll pass it back to Scott.
Nick, thank you very much. We've had a few questions come in. Let me go back. Nick, thank you. I learned a few things. I got some ideas from your application. Maybe I'll give you a call later today and pick your brain about a few different things. But Nick, thanks. We appreciate it. A question came in. Can you tell us what industrial firewall was used?
We're using, in this case, mGuards by Phoenix Contacts.
Okay.
We've used other similar ones, but that's what we use for this one in this case.
All right, great. We know there's a few different ones that are out there now. Appreciate that. The other questions that came in are related to InduSoft. So just FYI, we're opening it up now to questions. If you have any questions, let us know in the chat panel or the Q&A panel, and Nick and I will try to answer those. Nick, just FYI, your mic is still open. I'm going to keep you open as we have questions come in. A couple other questions that came in were, let's see, one here was reporting and trend capturing with scripting. Can you do that automatically based on the start and end time, and is it possible if the screen isn't visible? And I think that was maybe kind of related to the example that I gave, or maybe even what is built into your application, Nick. But I'm going to demonstrate that, or at least talk about that. When I gave this demonstration and I actually clicked on these individual buttons, this was done as a demonstration. And most likely you would have each of these steps that I did on each of these buttons automated or handled via scripting. So for example, this trend export toggle that happens, I'm doing that on a button so I can show that as an example. And again, that that trend export tag is here inside of this object. And so there's different ways to do that. This screen, in order to take a snapshot of that trend, would have to be live, but there's a few different ways to do that. You could have that running in the background and have another screen over the top of it. You could collect that data in a database or do a screenshot. There's several different ways of doing that. But in general, reporting and doing things automatically, for example, there is a graphics script area here that runs whenever there is a screen open, any screen open, or what's called the viewer. And here you can put VB script in when the screen, any screen opens, like when your project first starts, while there's screens open. So then you can put code in here to determine what you want to do. If the time of day equals such and such, or if it's the end of cycle or something fails, then you could do whatever emailing or reporting or toggling of tags that would then fire off something else. So to answer your question, yeah, you could do those types of things programmatically, even if screens are not visible. But in the case of taking a snapshot, you're going to probably need that screen open. There's a few different opportunities to be able to do that, and one of which I'm going to point out, but I'm not real familiar with, is you can hide a screen instead of closing it for performance optimization. And I'm not sure if that the trend will actually still be running and collecting data and visible in the background. That might be something we have to check out. But to generally answer your question, can you do things programmatically instead of pushing buttons? The answer is yes. Another question that came in was connections between several PLCs, how to optimize and manage efficiently reading and writing. Let me close this project, and I'm just going to start another brand new one here, just to give you a concept. Whenever you insert a new driver into a project, so for example, I'm going to put in here, I'm going to add a new driver. I'll add, let's say, a Modbus TCP driver. Could be any driver. Most of the drivers are going to start out by giving you this idea of this main driver sheet. And when you put tag names in here, you can then reference different PLCs based on their IP address in this station field. In fact, you don't have to hard code the IP address in here. These station fields can be string tags. So you could put inside of curly brackets, let's say, for example, PLC 1, and then define PLC 1 as a string tag in your startup script. And then you would be able to then point that to different PLCs. Now, this main driver sheet by default scans at 600 milliseconds. You can change that. I don't recommend that. What I would recommend instead is using what's called our standard driver sheet. So if you insert another driver sheet, it's going to be different than the main driver sheet. And what I often point out here is these, in the main driver sheet, you get these 4 status fields. And in the standard driver sheets, you get the 4 status fields, but then you also get the power to then trigger these sheets as fast or as slow as you want to within the components of the system. So you can make it go faster than the 600 milliseconds, or you can make it go slower. I'll give you an example on some pipeline applications, some pumping stations that are out remote. You might want that to be a 24-hour cycle. For example, it wakes up at 2 o'clock in the morning, bursts its data, validates it, and then shuts itself down. So unlike a lot of machine control where you want it happening at millisecond type rate, there's a 24-hour scan, right? Another instance of this, a good example of this is I went to a customer that had about 100 machines running InduSoft, and everything was running great on all but one machine, and I had to go visit them because they were getting a huge scan time. Well, it turns out that every cycle of the machine, they were reading in an array of 1,000 different part numbers that were 1,000 characters long, every cycle of the machine, and that was slowing things down. So I said, how often do you actually change these part numbers? He said, we change them just on Friday, once a week. So we moved that array of 1,000 characters, 1,000 part numbers into its own separate standard driver sheet and just triggered that when it got a database update from the plant server. So they got that huge amount of data trying to be transferred every cycle, and then its cycle time went down to like 30 milliseconds. So ended up being a really clean way to do that. So I hope some of those answer your questions. We still have this open for questions. If you have anything, let us know. And in the meantime, I'm going to put up a contact slide here, how you can get a hold of us. Hopefully this was some good information for you. Nick, thank you very much again. Really appreciate it. Again, I learned some things, and I'll probably be touching base with you midday today. So I don't see any other questions. Nick, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Nope, just thanks for the opportunity. Hopefully it was worthwhile for everyone.
Yeah, great. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. And again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. Let us know on the survey how we did. We're recording this webinar. We're going to post it in just a couple of days. And if you give us your shirt size, we'll send you a free T-shirt just for joining us. And let us know if you're ever interested in co-hosting a webinar with us. We'd like to have you on. Nick, once again, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And to everybody, have a great day. Thanks, Nick.